Are altcoins dead? This is the question that I keep getting asked, and I keep seeing people talk about this online because altcoins have just been performing really terribly this cycle, and especially with the backdrop of the stock market just absolutely booming, gold pumping, silver pumping, basically everything is going up except for Bitcoin and the altcoin market especially. And I want to answer this question for you guys. Are altcoins dead? And I want to cover for you in this video, why are stocks pumping and why is crypto dumping? I thought crypto was a risk on asset that would go up when stocks are going up. Are altcoins doomed? Are we just in this permanent market where altcoin performance is just going to be really bad? Is alt season ever going to make a comeback? If alts are to be making a comeback, what ones should we be focusing on? There's a number of reasons why crypto is dying while the stock market is pumping. The number one most important reason why crypto is dying and stocks are pumping is that TradFi has the mindshare and the innovation. So I want you to think about what was happening in like 2016, 2017 in the world and what's happening today in the world. And I want you to compare how interesting crypto was 8 years ago and how interesting crypto is today in comparison. If you look at what the dominating trends and ideas and topics were in 2017, crypto was one of the most interesting. It was basically the most revolutionary, this idea of like digital cash, digital money, evading taxation, paying for various things online on the black market. That was more so in 2014, but still, there was just a lot of enthusiasm around crypto. This ability to launch a token and build these crazy projects by launching an ICO. This was really like so many people were talking about this. And this was like the most interesting, revolutionary thing of the time. And when you think about today, everybody's talking about robotics, they're talking about AI, they're talking about Neuralink, SpaceX launching rockets into space, going to Mars, defense technology, anti-drone tech, regenerative agriculture. There is just so much more cool shit happening in the world now than was happening 8 years ago when crypto was, in my opinion, at its like most craziest, most hottest in 2017. Because every day I'm scrolling on Twitter, I'm literally seeing like new tech, new products, new businesses, new things coming up multiple times a day, every single day. And I've never seen this in my 8 years on Twitter. This is the first time I'm seeing this. I feel like technological innovation is just rapidly pacing and it's just growing at a faster and faster pace. It's exponential. And the truth is, like, all the interesting stuff that's happening right now in the world are happening outside of crypto. There's very few interesting things happening within crypto. And the most interesting thing, stablecoins, you don't even have a way to really make money from it, right? You can't invest into Tether. It's at a $500 billion market cap. Imagine if you could have bought into Tether. That would have been crypto's greatest success story of making everyday people rich. But no, you can't because it's behind the walled garden of being a private company. USDC, you couldn't buy that until it launched at a $40 billion valuation when it IPO'd. So that would have been another massive run-up. All these most innovative sectors of crypto where these companies are commanding massive valuations are outside of your realm of even being able to invest in. Besides that, nothing else is that interesting that's happening in crypto. Like I said, compare that to 2017. That is one of the main reasons why crypto is lagging behind. It's just really not that interesting. Now, where people focus their attention is where they allocate their capital. That's something that you need to keep in mind. If the world's talking about AI, robots, spaceships, and then we're trying to talk about meme coins, you can see why it's pretty obvious that no one gives a fuck about meme coins, because there's much more interesting things happening that people would rather invest into, especially institutions. The second most important reason, and this is actually probably the most important one, is that altcoins are structurally flawed. Most altcoins have a value proposition of two things, right? They talk about utility and they talk about governance. So utility is like, if you stake 100 of my shitcoin, you will get a trading fee discount. And governance is like, if you want to make protocol decisions, you got to having a share of the tokens. But these value propositions are not very strong. You're never going to get a token have a multi-billion-dollar valuation purely just because of utility and governance. The reason that all these tokens have the valuations that they do is because of the speculative premium that these tokens hold. It's the idea that more people are going to buy it in the future. It's the idea that the story is going to become more compelling, the project more adopted, the revenue higher, all these different things. It's about the story and, the speculation. That is why Plasma can launch at such a massive valuation, right? A multi-billion dollar, what is it, like a 10 billion plus FDV, even though there's like zero revenue made by the project and there's only a utility and a governance use case for token. And this is never going to have some crazy buyback story like hype. Holding this token is not equity. You do not own the company or the project or the protocol. It's just purely a token for basically exit liquidity for the team. And so because of this, altcoins are structurally flawed. Now, buybacks is the first positive movement that we've seen towards allowing token holders to benefit from adoption. So pre-buybacks, the only use case was utility and governance. Now we also have buybacks where projects are starting to make money and they say, hey, well, in the traditional world, when they make a lot of money, they use some of it to buy back the stock. And in the crypto world, now that we're making money, we're going to do something similar. Hyperliquid led the way with this. And this is like a good first step. But realistically, if you look at the performance of Hype and the multiple that it has on its revenue, it's really not doing that well. Even though the revenue for Hype has been consistently trending up and it's looking good. And with all the things that are happening, all the integrations it's having with Phantom, with MetaMask, all these different things, still not really performing that well, considering the adoption. And so buybacks are not really doing the job completely. There needs to be something more. There needs to be something that takes altcoins as being something that is structurally flawed into an asset that actually makes sense to hold as an investor in the same way that you would hold an equity, be a shareholder. And that's not here yet, right? You can see with Plasma, let's talk about Plasma. It launched at a multi-billion-dollar valuation with the token's use case being governance and utility, with no ability to make enough revenue to offset inflation. And the whole way that this token works is basically they have the best yield on Plasma because you get yield from XBL tokens, right? You've got like the 5% yield that you get that's like normal yield, right? And then they put a boost on where they give you XBL tokens. Now, who do you think is funding this? They're printing XBL tokens to give to the people yield farming, and the yield farmers are going to dump the XBL tokens. So it's inflation and then increased sell pressure. And where's the buy pressure coming from? Well, there's no revenue. There's no buybacks. You're not getting equity in this company. You're just buying a token that just exists for some reason. And that's why the token performance here is fucking terrible. It went to 2.5 billion market cap. It's now at 700 million in like the span of not even a month. I think a really good way to illustrate the difference between how crypto projects view their holders and how real companies view their shareholders. Look at this. This was a real project called Eclipse. They said, it's easy to hate your competitors, but do you have the courage to hate your community? Like, isn't that just such a crazy thing to tweet? The token holders are like the only reason these people make money, and they just hate them. And this is the truth. All these projects launching tokens, they hate you as a token holder. They don't give a fuck about you. You just exit liquidity. You're just a tool to make them rich. 99% of these projects don't give a single care about you in the world. You are just purely a number on a screen to take money from. Whereas at Tesla, and really like most real companies in the world, you can see how they talk about the shareholders in a different way. At Tesla, we've established a governance approach that's uniquely suited to our unique company. Good governance is not an end at itself, rather a necessary ingredient for durable, long-term shareholder returns. Our results speak for themselves. 40,000% total return since IPO, far outpacing the SP 500. Can you see how they like refer to the people who hold the company? You hold the company, you're an owner of the company. And their job, their sole job, is obviously to change the world, but ultimately, anything that they do is to benefit the shareholders. It's to make shareholders money. That's what they do. That's their job. It is not the job of any crypto project to make anyone holding the token rich. At least they don't state it like that because they probably can't because of the SEC. Oh, you're here to make the people who hold your token rich. Oh, well, you're a security now. You're not going to be able to trade on any centralized exchange. You're going to have to follow all these different rules, blah, blah, blah. That's why this would never happen. But it just goes to show you how different a crypto project is to, a real company that's a public equity, right? Now, there's another reason why altcoins have been performing terribly and people think are dead. And it's because one of the biggest advantages of the stock market is that there's barely any new stocks getting added to the exchange. Most stocks have a fixed supply cap, so there's not this like crazy inflation like most tokens have. And genuine moats exist within the stock market, which allows winners to outperform long term. How hard would it be for Rivian to compete with Tesla? It'd be really, really hard because Tesla has a moat, right? They have more capital, they have a better team who are better at engineering, they have Elon Musk, they have more factories, they have better tech, they have everything. What's the moat that OpenSea had over Blur, right? Remember when Blur did that airdrop campaign? Blur killed OpenSea because they basically said to everyone trading on OpenSea, would you rather buy and sell NFTs on OpenSea and get no airdrop? Or would you rather buy them on Blur and you can get the airdrop that we're going to do? Everybody moved over to Blur and they stopped using OpenSea. They took like 90% of the users of OpenSea. And that's just a classic example of like, there's no real moats in crypto. except for Bitcoin and a couple other assets, but there's not really any real moats. That means that if you're buying an altcoin, you can't just buy it like you're buying Tesla, where it's just going to outperform forever. Or at least that's like the hypothetical, it outperforms over a long period of time. You buy altcoins, they could get outcompeted and destroyed the next week. You don't know. Okay? And also, yeah, in crypto, millions of coins are created every year. They have massive inflation after a 6 to 24 month cliff, and very few alts have any long-standing moat. In crypto, it's very easy for a protocol to vampire attack, like we just said. Okay? And there's hundreds of different chains. There's 100 different niches that a coin could be within. You know, we've got DeFi, AI, we've got real world assets, stable coins. There's just so many different sectors that they compete in. And because there's more and more sectors within crypto as we go along, attention becomes more scarce and sector rotations become faster and faster. So with all this said, with all these reasons why stocks are doing really well and crypto is doing really bad, does that mean that stocks are doomed, that there's no more alt season? What is the advantage of crypto? I think that's something that you need to think about. Why would anyone want to launch a token? Well, launching a token has very minimal setup time and very little fees. And you can immediately attract a community who will help share your project, they'll use your product, and they'll give valuable feedback, they'll refer their friends, they'll sign up and pay for things in hope of an airdrop. You can basically go from 0 to 1 incredibly easy. So altcoins remove friction of idea to reality. So altcoins are really good in terms of the beginning phase. Now, once you've actually like got your project up and running, that is where launching a coin is actually like a really, really bad idea, okay? Because then you have to worry about regulations. It's easy when you're a new project for people to come along and use your product and they're early and they feel like they're going to make money and the token's going up because it's early. But eventually you're going to get to a point where the token goes down a significant amount and your token holders start to turn on you. And that's when they begin to realize, oh, even if this project becomes successful, I don't really own the company. Even though I was early, I don't own anything. I just own this token, which is semi-connected to the project. And due to regulations, you're never going to be able to integrate your holders as being like actual owners of your company through having like guaranteed revenue share, right? You have to do buybacks instead, which has its own set of flaws, right? And so basically, you know, you can't define your token holders as being shareholders because then you become a security and that comes with its own set of problems. So the path forward for altcoins is finding a way to give token holders the same holder rights as those who are shareholders without the regulatory issues that come with that. Right now, it's a trade-off. You become a security and you have all these problems to deal with, and basically none of the people who wanted to buy the token can get access to it, or you take the path that every other crypto project takes and they just skip around that regulation. And that has, obviously, like we've seen, a lot of problems. So are altcoins dead? We're going to answer that question. Is alt season going to make a return? In my opinion, alt season is done for. I think alts are going to make a comeback, but I think alt season as a concept is done. There's too many sectors, too many different chains, too many different communities of people. There's just too many coins. It's impossible for everything to go up at the same time. Also, the biggest change that we've seen is this centralized exchange to decentralized exchange movement. In 2017, when we had a massive alt season, the reason that occurred is because everybody was trading on Binance and there was 200 coins on Binance, and eventually people just ran out of coins to buy. And so everything basically went up because there was just a million people trying to buy 200 coins. Everything goes up. You know, pretty simple math there. A million people, 200 coins, obviously everything's going to go up. And we've obviously had smaller alt seasons ever since, as the numbers begin to shift. Instead of a million people and 200 coins, the next season it's 3 million people, but 10,000 coins. But right now what we have is maybe like 10 million people and 2 million coins. And you can see how that fractures liquidity between such a very thin, you know, it's a very thin layer, right? Where the capital is spread very thin. And that is why we're never probably going to get an alt season ever again. But that doesn't mean that alts are done. And that's what we're going to talk about in a second. And so the question remains with this whole topic of altcoins and how are they going to make them work structurally, and is anyone really going to want to launch an altcoin that's like a serious businessman who wants to make a serious change on the world? The question remains like, will issuing a token rather than traditional equity provide enough tangible benefits to continue to encourage genuine builders to tokenize? Because like we said, when you first launch a token, it's great. Easily get users, build a community, blah, blah. But everything after that sucks. And that's what needs to be fixed, not just for the people who run the project, who run the token, but for the holders. So what should you do as someone trying to make money from crypto? altcoins was your way to get rich. How are you going to make it work? Well, here's some of the biggest takeaways that I've had from the past month. I think takeaway number one is you do not want to ignore stocks. I haven't been ignoring stocks technically, but if you're someone who has been ignoring the stock market, I think you need to maybe reconsider that if you're investing with, let's say, more than $50,000. Given how much rate of change we are having in the economy, in innovation, in AI, and where that's going to take us, and also the Trump administration openly stating that they want us to be in a growth economy, you should expect to see the stock market continue to boom for while Trump is the president. And so, for example, I bought Tesla in March and I bought it at $250. So I bought it right here. This was when everyone was hating on Tesla and all the lefties started like burning Tesla cars and shit. And now it's up 75%, which I guess in the crypto world is like not bad, but it's not great. But realistically, like if you have enough capital, you can make serious money. So I'm up 400K, right, on this investment, basically doing nothing. And you have to think about how difficult was this money to make and how much easier was it mentally? How much simpler was it? How much less stressful was it versus doing this in crypto? Because when you think about it, the strategy is very simple for stocks. You just select a basket of good assets that you want to buy. You wait for capitulation to occur, which is basically just analyzing a few different data sets. It's nothing crazy. You look at the long-term moving averages. That's what this line is. This is I think the 200 weekly MA on Tesla. It's very simple. You just buy here, just set alerts, wait for it to go there, then buy. And then you hold, you do nothing. Now, the reason crypto is tricky is because in the stock market, you can do 1, 2, 3, make money. In crypto, it's 1, 2, 3, and then you have to keep in mind that every coin goes to zero. So it's not hold, it's you have to actually have a really good sell strategy or you're going to end up losing all your money. That's the tricky part. But in the stock world, you just select the right things, buy them at good prices, hold, and then you're just going to make money. It's so much simpler. Okay? And this is something that I wish I did sooner. I wish I was allocating to stocks sooner because it's pretty simple, right? So I just think, and this is a large cap. There's been a lot of assets like iron. This one did really, really well. I actually got sent this one at $17 and I was very close to buying, but I was waiting for a dip. But this is up like 3-4x in a month. People talk about alt season. It's occurring in the stock market. It's literally up 4x in like 3 months. It's about as alt season as you can get. And that's on size. That's not like some illiquid shitcoin. You can put 10 mil in and be fine. So that's just something to keep in mind. And here's the Tesla signal that I sent to my mastermind, because we do stocks in my mastermind as well, because it's very important. So that's step number one. You can't ignore stocks. There's a lot of money there. Second thing, due to shorter sector rotations, you need to take profit earlier on alts. So when I look back at the plays that I've had on altcoins in the past 3 months or 6 months, all of them basically went up between like 2 to 10x. And then a lot of them like full retraced the upside after like a period of like 2 to 3 months. And what I've realized is that because what is the hot trend changes so quickly, you can't just hold an alt for longer than 3 months and expect it to just keep going up. They have a very short lifespan. And so my strategy going forward is if I buy an altcoin, I have to have sold at least the initial investment within like 2 months. And I should have probably full exited within 3-4 months, unless it's like a really special altcoin that I think will last longer than it's just single sector rotation. That's the mindset that I'm taking going forward. If I would have done this for the past 6 months, I would have done really well. The next lesson, the next insight, is that the higher return that you want, the more important your edge is. So this stock strategy that I told you about, which is very simple, it's just pick the right assets, buy them low, hold. This is the easiest way that you can outperform most investors. If you want to outperform 90% of hedge funds, 90% of investors, anyone who's holding the S&P 500, you do this. But it's not going to get you a 100x return, and that's what a lot of you guys are looking for. So the higher the return you want, the more difficult it's going to be to achieve it. I've done a little table here to show you what I mean. So if you're just trying to make like a 2 to 5x, in a bull market, that's going to have a moderate difficulty. It's not that hard. The required edge is just you need to be patient, because you might only get a buying opportunity once or twice a year. So you've got to be very patient. And then you just need to have the right data, okay? And in terms of data, you don't even need the right data. You just need to listen to the right person. If you don't even care about this market, you just listen to the right guy, be patient. You will 2 to 5x in a bull market. And to do this, all you need to do is buy Bitcoin and stocks like Tesla, Google, things like that. If you want to 5 to 10x your money, then you're getting into the hard territory. So you're going to want to do the above, but you also now need to add in the altcoin game, which is keeping up with all the latest metas, doing on-chain analysis, selling at the right time, active portfolio management, heavy research, all these things. Now, obviously you could, again, follow someone who's a pro. And that's a way to like skip all of that. But if you're trying to like make money yourself, there's just a massively increased active element of work which this strategy is going to take. Not just from you're going to have to put in more time, but also it's just you're going to need to get a lot more skilled at the game of investing. And so with this one, yeah, you're going to want to do alts, Bitcoin, and stocks. And again, 10, 20x, 20x plus, it's really just doing what you would have done here, but more discipline, more skill, higher difficulty, and having more of your money in high risk assets. Okay. This is how I would view your portfolio going forward. Okay. And so if you've watched this video, you found this market environment very tricky, you don't feel confident in navigating the markets by yourself, you want to work alongside a team of experts where you get exactly what to buy and when to sell for altcoins, Bitcoin, and even the stock market, and have a custom tailored portfolio that has been made to work for your exact situation. I run a private mastermind community where I work one-on-one with everyone inside to hit their financial goals. And you get access to me and my network's exact investments so that you can basically just follow the pro. That's the idea. Instead of you having to do all of this yourself, you can follow someone else who's doing that for you, essentially. And if you're interested to join, you can apply to join basically at the link in the bio. If you've watched the video this far, thank you for watching. Hope this was insightful for you guys, and I'll see you in the next one.